Imagine someone who has always lived with kindness at the center of their identity. A person who goes out of their way to be gentle, to be fair, and to stand up for what is right. Someone who'd offer a helping hand without expecting anything in return. Now, picture that same person slowly changing, becoming someone cold, calculating, and even capable of hurting others. What could drive such a disturbing transformation? How does a good human being morph into someone they once couldn't even understand? In this video, we're going to uncover the psychological and philosophical mechanisms that shift the compass of human behavior. Forces so subtle yet so powerful, they can turn virtue into vice without a person even realizing it. And the final insight we'll explore. It will shatter your assumptions about human nature, and maybe even about yourself. This is more than just an intellectual exploration. It's a topic with real consequences, because this change isn't just theoretical, it affects us all. You may be thinking, I could never go down that path. But history, science, and lived experience prove otherwise. The uncomfortable truth is, under the right circumstances, anyone, regardless of how moral or compassionate they believe themselves to be, can fall into darkness. Dr. Philip Zimbardo, who ran the famous Stanford prison experiment, showed us how ordinary people, given the wrong setting, can commit horrifying acts. Stanley Milgram's obedience studies echoed the same warning. The takeaway: our ethical anchors are not as steady as we'd like to think. Most chillingly, people often don't even recognize the transformation until they're already far gone. So, what actually starts this descent? What are these invisible forces that chip away at goodness until there's nothing left but a hollow shell? That's exactly what we're going to break down today. And what we uncover might change the way you see others and yourself. Let's begin with perhaps the most deceptive danger: the gradual, almost imperceptible slide from virtue to vice. Imagine standing on solid ground, confident in your moral footing, when beneath your feet, the floorboards silently weaken. Each crack might be too small to notice, each tremor too subtle to feel in the moment, yet collectively they lead to a collapse. This silent descent doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It thrives in the gaps between our awareness and action, those fleeting moments we dismiss as insignificant. Maybe it's skimming the truth to avoid conflict, or conceding a minor principle to fit in. Over time, these tiny concessions accumulate, forming a hidden current that pulls us away from the person we think we are. We don't see ourselves as slipping. Instead, we rationalize. This is an exception, or just this once. But these absolutions are the very bricks that build the path to moral compromise. When we eventually look back, the distance traveled seems vast, but the steps taken felt inconsequential. Recognizing the silent descent requires vigilance. It demands that we pay attention to our daily choices, how we talk about others, how we respond under pressure, and how we justify our small betrayals. Because it's in these unremarkable moments, tucked into our routines, that the real transformation begins. This doesn't start with a catastrophic event. No, it begins slowly, almost gently. A white lie here, a small compromise there. Harmless, right? But it's in these micro-decisions that our ethical fabric begins to fray. The logic sounds innocent. It's just this once, or it's no big deal. But each time you cross a line, the next line looks just a little less rigid. What felt wrong last month feels justifiable today. And with each step, your internal compass weakens. This is what psychologists call the slippery slope effect. Often the initial motivation is noble. Maybe someone breaks a rule to help a friend or tells a half-truth to avoid hurting feelings. But slowly, those noble exceptions morph into habitual behavior. Over time, the original line between right and wrong becomes blurry. Now add to this the influence of authority. Milgram's experiments showed how average people, when instructed by a figure of power, would carry out actions they believed were causing harm. Why? Because they were told to. They felt it wasn't their responsibility anymore. That's the scary part. People don't always act from malice. Sometimes they're just afraid to say no. They surrender moral responsibility to someone else. The phrase, "I was just following orders," has excused many horrors throughout history. Next comes group identity. When people strongly align with a group, whether political, religious, or cultural, they often begin to view outsiders with suspicion or disdain. The group becomes a family. Anyone outside of it, a threat. And the moment someone is seen as not one of us, empathy begins to evaporate. History has shown us how this mindset can justify cruelty. Genocides, purges, and violent movements didn't start with monsters. They started with people who believed they were defending their group. This us versus them mindset fuels dehumanization, a psychological tool that allows people to rationalize harm. Because if the victim isn't really human in your eyes, then you feel no guilt for hurting them. Here's where things get personal. Up until now, we've looked at others, at soldiers, at followers, at people in history who drifted into darkness. But what happens when we turn that lens inward, when the mirror points back at us? It's easy to believe we are the exception, that we would never allow ourselves to fall, that we would be the ones who speak up, who stand tall, who do the right thing. But self-reflection is hard. It demands that we strip away the comforting illusion of invincibility and admit that we too are vulnerable, that the seeds of cruelty, of indifference, of self-righteousness exist in all of us. Given the right circumstances, stress, desperation, social pressure, fear of exclusion, those seeds can grow. Think about times when you stayed silent in the face of something wrong, not because you agreed, but because it was easier. Think about when you've treated someone as less than because of their beliefs, their background, or even just their tone. These moments may seem small, but they are cracks in the mirror. Cracks that, if left unchecked, can shatter your sense of who you are. Facing this reality isn't weakness, it's strength. Because only when we confront our potential for darkness can we begin to master it. We must be willing to ask ourselves, am I becoming someone I would have once disapproved of? And more importantly, what will I do about it? Self-justification is perhaps the most dangerous phase in this descent. People don't like to see themselves as the villain. So what do? They rewrite the story. Leon Festinger, a psychologist, called this mental tension cognitive dissonance. When someone acts in a way that conflicts with their beliefs, they experience inner discomfort. Instead of admitting fault, they reshape their beliefs to suit their behavior. So the person who lies tells themselves it was for their own good. The one who hurts someone says they had it coming. These internal narratives make it easier to commit further harm. After all, you still think you're a good person, even as your actions suggest otherwise. Then comes moral licensing. This is when doing something good makes people feel they have earned the right to do something bad. A person might donate to charity in the morning and cheat a colleague in the afternoon, telling themselves it all balances out. The more people view themselves as righteous, the more likely they are to ignore their own moral lapses. And history shows that some of the darkest actions have been taken by those who believed they were on the right side. The final step is full dehumanization. Once someone sees another person as an object, an obstacle, or a threat, they no longer feel guilt for harming them. That's why soldiers in war are trained to see the enemy not as people, but as targets. That's why online trolls attack with words they'd never say in person, because the moment someone stops seeing another person's humanity, morality loses its grip. And this doesn't only happen in wartime. It happens in families, in offices, on social media. Wherever empathy is drained, cruelty takes its place. So the question is, how do we resist this? How do we stop the descent? To prevent good people from turning bad, we need to build mental and emotional safeguards. These guardrails act as a compass, not just pointing north, but holding us back when we drift. They keep us tethered to our values when the winds of pressure, fear, or temptation try to knock us off course. Imagine walking a narrow path along the edge of a cliff. The guardrails don't change the terrain, but they give you a boundary, a reminder of where not to step. In life, our ethical boundaries work the same way. They're formed by deliberate reflection, reinforced by practice, and maintained through courage. We often think morality is an internal trait, something we either have or don't. But in truth, it's a skill. It must be exercised regularly. The more we choose to act with integrity, even in the smallest ways, the stronger our moral muscles become. It's saying no to gossip when it's easier to join in. It's admitting fault when blame shifting is more convenient. It's staying kind when cruelty would be applauded. But this path isn't just about self-discipline. It also involves surrounding ourselves with accountability. Friends, mentors, and communities who remind us who we want to be. People who call us out when we lose our way. Because no one walks the path of integrity alone. And those guardrails, once in place, can be the very reason we stay standing when the world pushes back. The first is radical self-awareness. The idea that you're too good to be corrupted is, ironically, the very thing that opens the door to corruption. we need to admit our vulnerability. Ask yourself, am I excusing something I once condemned? Am I acting out of fear or out of principle? If someone else did what I'm doing, would I criticize it? Consistent reflection keeps your inner compass alive. Awareness is one thing. Acting on it is another. True moral strength comes when you risk something to uphold your values. When staying silent would be easier, but speaking out is right. The people who resist evil aren't superheroes. They're ordinary individuals who chose principle over popularity. And that strength is built in everyday choices. Telling the truth when it's uncomfortable. Defending someone when it costs you something. Empathy is the ultimate shield. It dismantles the illusion that they are different from us. Every time you take the time to understand someone's pain, to see life through their eyes, you make it harder to cause harm. Even short moments of human connection can undo years of bias. Corruption doesn't happen in one act. It's a slow, step-by-step decline. But that also means we can stop it, step by step, moment by moment. Here's the last piece of the puzzle. The most powerful force behind the transformation from good to evil isn't personal weakness. It's the environment. Our surroundings shape us. Our systems, institutions, social circles, they influence our choices more than we think. Zimbardo's Lucifer effect showed that a bad system can twist even the most moral person. A culture that rewards aggression creates aggressive people. A company that tolerates lies builds dishonest employees. So don't just ask, am I good? Ask, am I in a place that helps me stay good? Surround yourself with people who challenge you to rise higher, who value integrity, who speak up when you drift. Because just as a toxic environment can drag you down, a healthy one can lift you up. Now for the final question. If your environment is that powerful, do you really have control over who you become? The answer? Yes. You might not control the world, but you control your response to it. You can choose awareness over denial, integrity over ease, compassion over division. Every day, in every moment, you make choices that shape your soul. Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, "The line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." There are no absolute monsters, no flawless saints, only people, evolving, vulnerable, powerful. Now ask yourself, who are you becoming? Are you resisting the pull of moral decay? Or are you making quiet compromises that lead you somewhere darker? Because in the end, the difference between a noble human being and a corrupted one is choice. And that choice is in your hands right now. Thanks for watching. If this exploration into the hidden forces shaping our choices resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into human psychology and the stories that define us. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which part of this journey surprised you the most? Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep choosing wisely.